that comes up that the recording has started, you could just X out of that.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, I can see it, Terry.
I can see it, Terry. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining the webinar today on measurement strategies. You may have seen in the emails that we sent out about this that this is a series of webinars, and we had links to previous sessions there. So if you want to, it's right there in the meeting appointment. If you have the Teams invitation, we're kind of in the process of transitioning from invitations directly from Teams to invitations being registered through our new platform. So some people may have those recordings and some people may not. If you need them and you want them, just send me an email at ltonini@agingoutinstitute.org, and I'll be happy to send those links to you. So this is our fifth webinar on this particular topic of measurement. And you see here what we've had before, the measuring organization impact introduction, hurdles that organizations face measuring impact, why measure your organization's impact, who should you engage in measuring impact, and then today's, which is why measurement strategies should be implemented, or what measurement strategies rather should be implemented. So we're going to really kind of dig more into the strategy part and the plan part of your measurement program. And I am not the expert in that. I am the host with Aging Out Institute. Our experts are Skip and Terry. So with us today is Skip Brown. Sorry, I'm not speaking very clearly today. Owner and principal consultant of Connect Synergy, and Teri Burgess, consultant with Connect Synergy. And they are the experts in this topic of measurement with nonprofits specifically. And I am the executive director of Aging Out Institute, but I think you probably all at least know my name, if nothing else. So I really appreciate, Skip and Teri, that you've joined us today. It's going to be a presentation, yes, but as Skip mentioned, if you have any questions, it's not like we're just talking at you kind of webinar. We are absolutely open to you asking questions, making comments, post things in the chat. If you have any thoughts along the way, we want to make it as engaging as possible. So, all right, moving to the next, which is the introductions. We want to get a sense of everybody who's here. Right. And so I'm going to ask everybody to go around and provide a little information about yourself, who you are, what your title is, your organization, and maybe kind of the main focus of your organization with young people. Is it housing? Is it education? Is it life skills? What is your primary purpose? So I'm going to go just down the list I see here in the people box. Carissa, it looks like you would be up first.
Good morning. I'm Carissa Kennedy. I work with Kids in the Spotlight. We were the recent Fire Award honoree from AOI, and we are a filmmaking organization. So we work with foster and underserved kids, 12 to 24, doing a filmmaking program where they're able to write, cast, and star in their own short films. And then at our production studio with Purpose, it is a workforce development site. So people can rent out the studio space. We literally have people here right now doing a tour, and then we have some people here doing measurements for an upcoming shoot. But anytime they rent the space out, then our youth are hired on as PAs, so they earn as they learn to help develop the skill sets and the financial independence that former foster youth are needing.
Wonderful, thank you. And Nathaniel, you're there behind the computer or whatever that box is. I can't tell. So what do you do there?
So I actually moved right now. I moved into one of the set rooms. I'm in the medical room right now. So I'm on the participant end of Kids in the Spotlight. I went through one of their programs. I'm currently an alumni working on a documentary on the over-medication in foster care and how it relates to the war on drugs as well as substance abuse. We were one of the honorees for a grant with the EYC, which is Elevate Youth California, through the Sierra Health Foundation. Their focus is Black and Brown youth as it relates to substance use. So yeah, alongside two other uh, program participants working on that documentary. And yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for attending today. All right, I'm going to go to Kendra. If you could do a quick introduction, I'd really appreciate that. And we'll find out a little more about you.
All right, cool. I just wanted to say, Nathaniel, that is awesome. Really, really awesome. And I would love to like learn a little bit more about that myself.
Yeah.
Because I just did a research study with Northwestern in Chicago. So if you can send that to me, that'd be awesome. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kendra Wright. I work with Let It Be Us as a program manager, where we work with kiddos between the ages of like 14 to 25. And we're pretty much just helping them gain those independent living skills before emancipation. So majority of our kiddos are either they have a goal of independence, where, you know, they're basically going to be out there on their own in the world and having to access it themselves. We pair them up with a Springboard family, which is a licensed foster parent, that pretty much works with them directly. And we pretty much just, you know, support them with like education, employment, and so much more. So that's pretty much what we do at Let It Be Us here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, Maria with Charity.
Hi, I am the executive director and the founder of Charity, and our goal is to eliminate the financial and emotional barriers for young adults beginning independent living, and we do so by providing and delivering furniture and household goods at no cost to the young adults. Right now, we are based in Ohio and serve 6 counties in Ohio. But we are looking to expand, and hopefully we will be in Columbus soon.
Fantastic. Good. That's great. All right, let's see. It looks like Marlena, you're with Charity as well.
No, that's just my last name. Oh, sorry, my camera.
Oh my goodness, I just noticed that. Oh, that's so funny. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So I'm actually with Kids in the Spotlight. I'm our fund developer. I'm the newest member to the team, really just helping to align our fundraising with our measurement and impact and everything like that.
Wow.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mukesh.
Hi, Mukesh Baral. Friends of Children has a program called Focus. I am a program manager for Greater Boston area. We basically train caring, compassionate, and long-term relationship-oriented people to work with our 18 to 26 years old who have been impacted by the system, and they kind of help them to navigate the complexities of the the systems that they have to work with after they get independence. So 18 to 26 is our age range, and we are throughout Massachusetts.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. And it looks like last but not least is Rhonda.
Hello, everybody. Rhonda Safford, Student Services Director at Reach Higher Montana. And we disperse the education and training voucher funds for the state of Montana. And then we also host an annual summit for kids, foster care kids ages 16 to 19 at a college campus once a year. And we're about to have our 19th one this June.
Wow.
Fantastic. So we're all over the country here today, and I'm so glad that you all joined and got a chance to meet each other. But now it's time for the meat of the event, which is the measurement strategy conversation. So I think this is the point I turn things over to you, Skip and Terry.
You bet.
Yep, we're ready to go. First thing we're going to start with is a bit of a visual, and don't get concerned. We're not going to read through the whole thing. But those of you that have been with us before have seen this before. This is what we call our measurement maturity continuum. And it's basically a tool for organizations to use to say, all right, where am I at in this journey based on certain topics or subject matter? We've been through the top 2 topics with previous webinars, such as mindset and attitude and levels and roles that are engaged in measurement. And today we are focusing on that middle section there, which is, methodologies, in other words, the how, the when, and the where, and focusing on that measurement strategy. So just to give you a blow up of what this looks like, so you can be thinking about it as we go through it. You can see on the left, that is the pretty much the description of an organization that is in the beginning stages of looking at this particular topic. And on the right, what characteristics that organization might take on if they are in the advanced stages of, adopting measurement strategies and methodologies. At the bottom, you can see a list of things that will let you know that, you've kind of arrived on that advanced side. So you can see there established rituals are going to exist within the organization. You're going to have strategic goals that are set up based on a 3 to 5 year time frame. You're going to have something called line of sight operational SMART objectives, which we're going to talk about in this webinar. And those you can look at annually or in shorter time frames than that. And you're also going to have processes and procedures in place that'll be based on reviews of your progress towards those operational objectives. And you're going to use measurements, hopefully, to do that. And we'll also touch on something called iterative quality improvements, which are designed to help you make small steps towards meeting your objectives. So let's continue on from there. Skip?
Yeah, and what we really want to emphasize, and thank you, Terry, for kind of painting that picture. We really emphasize that, this is a journey, like the work you do with your youth. I mean, those are journeys. Your youth are on journeys, and you're really trying to help them have successful journeys. So we realize that organizational development, especially when you get down the weeds of trying to measure services impact, that's a journey, and you don't take it in one step and you're done. So, for instance, if you look at some of the previous webinars and you look at the recordings of the previous webinars, you see it, you have questions, give us a call. We can chat. The call's free. Give us a chat, because that's part of your journey. We also want to emphasize today, and we realize that we're running in promptly at 3 o'clock, but that if you have any questions or ahas or insights, or, hey, wait a minute, I don't agree with any of that, Skip, we really want you to speak out. You can put it in the chat, or you can just do it live, which is really, I think, helpful to all of us. So we really want to emphasize that this is informal. We think this is a serious topic, but we'd like to treat it informally. So what we're going to do is cover these 4 learning objectives, try to get through all 4 of these today. What's your organization's big audacious goals for foster care, the strategic goals. And some of you may have strategic goals, some of you may not. That's really okay. Second is, how do you achieve the big audacious goals? Identify your operational objectives. And we want to begin to use some language here in a real precise way. Use words like goals, objectives, outcomes, measurements. Use that language in precise ways. Number 3, develop and implement your measurement strategy. That's a long-term process. We know that. But today we just want to begin to talk about that some, see where you folks are in your measurement strategy or process, and then talk about adjusting your playbook. That this is an iterative quality process, and improvements to your organizational operational objectives. And we realize that is a journey, so we want to emphasize that. So let's get right to our first learning objective. What's your organization's big, audacious goals for foster youth, your strategic goals? Now, with another client, Terry and I begin to realize that we refer to these as BHAGs, and you may have heard that language before, big, hairy, audacious goals. So we're talking about things that are huge, that are out 3 to 5 years in terms of strategic. So we want to keep that in mind. The things are, the way we define strategic goals, they're those BHAGs, those big, hairy, audacious things that are out there for like 3 to 5 years. Then what we want to talk about is, next what we want to talk about, I should say, is aligning your strategic goals with your mission. Again, some of you may have a strategic plan that talks about vision, mission, strategic goals. Some of you may not have that. You may have something different. Some of you may be brand new and you're just developing these kinds of things. But your mission statement really describes why your organization exists. And it's good to have that because it gives you a North Star, something that you're constantly headed towards. Otherwise, everybody kind of does their own thing, and you're never sure if you're really helping the youth or not. Then the strategic goals define what the organization is going to be about and what the organization is going to be doing. And those desired big results, those 3 to 5 year things towards the mission. And that we want to point out that the strategic goal is a big result you want to achieve at the end of 3 to 5 years. These goals are broader than operational objectives, and they're written in very general terms. So we want to be precise about that kind of language. Teri, anything to add to that before we move to the next? Go for it, Teri.
Nope, I think you did a great job there, Skip. This is just a little bit of reinforcement on the information that Skip just covered. This gives you a visual. You know, the big thing about having strategic goals that align to your mission and then to have objectives below that is that you have a line of sight that goes from that very high level that shows you where your organization wants to go, and then it brings it down into lower levels of detail that will basically tell you how you're going to get there. So if you kind of keep in mind this visual, hopefully as we go through this subject, it will make sense to you. You can see there that your mission and vision and values are very aspirational. But then when you start to get into your strategic plan and then we drill down into the objectives that we're going to talk about here, it becomes more achievable, more, I'm going to say tactical for lack of a better term.
Right. And what we want to emphasize is that we realize that different organizations may be at different places. Some of you may be thinking, oh, geez, I know all this stuff. Let's get to the real meat of the matter. Others may be thinking, well, this is pretty new to me, and I'm not familiar with some of this language. You know, the language, precision of the language becomes really important within your organization and part of your organizational culture. So we want to give you an example here. And this is a human resource team example. So it doesn't apply to aging out youth, doesn't refer to foster youth at all. But let's look at this in terms of the strategic goal of reducing employee turnover and increasing retention. And think about that reduce employee turnover, increase retention. Now, if you're human resources folks, that sounds like a pretty exciting goal. To the rest of us, that sounds like maybe it's pretty boring. But let's turn to your world of foster care. And if you have a strategic plan, if you have a big, hairy, audacious goal, one that really you think will help your youth, could you just share that with us, something that you have, so we kind of see where folks are? You can share in the chat or share it live. We really like if you share it live too.
So strategic wise, our goal over our kids is making sure these kids get the job experience of the film industry. It's a strategic goal of ours. We achieve that through with our at the production studio. Every single rent out that we have, 2 PAs have to be youth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Teri and Lynn, were you able to hear all that? My connection is not maybe as good as I'd like it to be. Could you kind of paraphrase that?
What I heard was to make sure that their kids get the job experience with the film industry. Did I get that correct, guys?
Job experience and paid.
Okay. And let's just talk about that a little bit. So the youth get the experience. They maybe get rewarded somehow. What does that do for them?
What it allows for them is to create this portfolio which is very necessary whenever it comes into the entertainment industry, especially CVs and whatnot.
Yeah.
The paid part allows them, there's a lot of opportunities prior to the strike that it was just volunteering and whatnot whenever it came to being an extra, whenever it came to shadowing someone, you're doing our volunteer work. For the paid opportunities, it allows for sustainability. We're talking these youth are able to go in and their passion stays without having to worry about any of the problems they might have back at home.
That's great, because that kind of exchange that we just heard, boy, that really helps us if we're working together in the same program. Hey, this is what we're working on. This is why it's really important to the kids. Lynn, could you share some other ideas that folks have shared in the chat?
Yes, Carissa shared a couple here for Kids in the Spotlight. Create film distribution avenues for the entire Kids in the Spotlight film catalog. To create a replicable model to expand Kids in the Spotlight program to other states and communities. And to establish a residential academy as a vehicle for success through an immersive environment.
Right. Yeah, a vehicle for success. And then within your organization, around when you have program reviews and staff meetings, you can talk about, well, what does success look like? What is success for these kids? What really helps our youth? And the more you have those kinds of discussions during staff meetings and then make that part of your planning process, strategic plan, operations plan. Hey, and how in the heck do we measure that stuff? That becomes really important. Teri, I'll turn it over to you if you can get to learning objective 2.
Sure. So now that we've talked a little bit about those big audacious goals, based on our line of sight illustration, the next thing that you're going to want to look at is your operational objectives. In other words, how do we get there, right? So, first of all, what is an operational objective? Well, a few slides ago, we talked about the strategic goals and how they were kind of broad-based. These are a little bit more detailed, and they also are more real-time. In other words, the objective is to be able to accomplish these within a shorter period of time, right? So hopefully the juxtaposition there helps you to see the difference between strategic and operational. Where I came from, I had an IT background, and our operational objectives were usually 1 year at a time, but you can actually have objectives that, they might be just a few weeks, they might be a couple months, or they may take the whole year to accomplish, okay? So to give you another visual, I don't know about you, but I'm a visual person, so this helps me to remember things. We've added a segment to our pyramid here, and you can see that there is a line of sight that goes from your mission, vision, and values down through your strategic plan and those objectives that we're talking about now. And then eventually it's going to take us into that measurement strategy where we're looking at, okay, how do we measure our progress? What are our targets? And what are our plans for how we're going to get there? Right. Skip.
And, as we're putting all this together, like the examples that you folks have shared, if you're sitting around the table, the staff meetings, that you can have discussion whether or not, hey, is that strategic or is that operational? And what's important is not what's in some textbook, but what you folks agree upon, and then you begin to document. Because if you don't begin to write it down and document it, so that, for instance, if Nathaniel and I both working on the project together and a program together, we're working towards the same thing and it's written down and we have that and we can share it. So that really becomes important, and therefore the whole idea of what we call SMART objectives. Some of you may have heard of SMART goals. Can you raise your hand if you've heard of SMART goals? Yeah, a number of you have. Teri and I like to actually refer to it as SMART objectives because we use goals in the sense of being strategic. And so we like to talk about objectives being the things that support the strategic. It's what's underneath the strategic. It's the stuff I'm going to work on today, tomorrow, next week, maybe next month to achieve those big, hairy, audacious goals. So we like to talk about that this SMART, that things are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, they're time-based. Let's look at that real quickly. Using this as a bit of a blueprint can really help you. Strategic goals are not specific. Strategic goals are big ideas, huge ideas. For instance, like we want our kids to have joy as they mature. I mean, that's pretty strategic. But then, okay, let's talk about some objectives we want to achieve maybe in the next couple of months in terms of our youth achieving that BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal. So that's where you begin to talk around the table, some specific ideas, come up with some specific ideas of things you want to achieve to get towards that big, hairy, audacious goal, and then begin to talk about, but how in the heck are we going to measure that? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? Is it time-based? And also, what kind of services are we going to do to achieve that? So that stuff becomes really important for us as we begin to tie together strategic and operational. And as we do this, we also want to make sure that you're documenting stuff, that you're codifying stuff, you're documenting it, writing it down so that you have that. Teri.
Sure. So to give you some other examples that'll hopefully help you to more readily understand the difference between the level of a strategic goal and then operational objectives, we're going to harken back to our HR example. And you can see here on the left, we've got that reduce employee turnover, increase retention goal. But over on the right, you can see that we have some operational objectives. And hopefully you can see where the SMART acronym comes into play here. The onboarding program will be improved and implemented by 3/30/24. Okay, that is time-based, right? Your annual employee turnover rate will be reduced by 10% by 12/31/24. That is time-based. It's specific. It's hopefully achievable, which we will talk about that a little bit more later. And of course, there's one more item listed here that the quarterly performance reviews will reflect supervisory staff meets 80% of performance objectives specific to supervision. So you can see there that, it's putting some specifics to the equation that will actually lead you to metrics and being able to capture data that you need to assess those metrics. So let's move on here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. Do some of you have operational objectives that you've already developed within your organization that you folks use on a day-to-day basis to manage your progress either formally or informally? And if someone would be willing to share that, that would be great. I'd also be interested to hear how you gather the data, if you gather the data, to try to assess how well you're doing.
And it's okay to say, hey, I don't do any of this stuff. Sorry.
So Nathaniel, maybe I could pick on you for a second. You said you want to make sure that kids get job experience and pay, within the film industry. So is there some type of measurable objective, let's say, or specific objective that you folks use?
Do you mind repeating that for a second?
Sure. I'm wondering if, you said your strategic goal was to make sure that kids get job experience and pay within the film industry. So is there a specific objective that your organization uses that you measure to tell you that you're meeting that particular goal?
I'm not part of that end on the tracking. So I couldn't give you that one. I think maybe Clarissa or Melina could dive deeper into that piece.
Okay.
What we do over in, I could talk about more on the documentary half for sure. One strategic strategic plan that we want to have is getting in contact with professionals and youth with lived experience to give their testimonials and statements on over medication. To track that, we have a CRM model utilizing Monday.com, given how often we're reaching out to people, what role they have on the documentary, when's the last time they've responded, and things of that nature to track.
So, Nathaniel, what would be a big thing that the youth get out of getting that job, getting paid, getting some recognition, and that? What's one of the big things they get out of that?
I think from what I've heard in meetings, it would be they are becoming, let me get approval if I can coin this term real quick. So the big idea is for them to become this, I got approval to coin it, momentum mentors. So we're essentially creating these youth that have sustainability and the experience to create a pipeline in which they're essentially giving back to the organization, to their youth as alumni, as representation as well, so that they're then mentoring the next generation that are in the same shoes in which they started.
And you know, we could be really think huge and think, yeah, sustainability towards happiness. And I mean, that's a huge kind of thing to think about. So that's why that sort of dialogue is really important. Thank you for answering Terry's question.
Thank you, thank you. You can pick on me throughout the whole meeting. I got you.
Okay,
We appreciate it, because those kind of examples make things very real for us. Then the things that we've just touched on, linking that big, audacious, strategic stuff to the more operational stuff. You know, if Nathaniel and I are working on a program versus, let's say, Lynn and I working on a program, California and Pennsylvania, we may be coming to very different conclusions. That's really okay. It's what your organization does and how your organization comes together, your staffing, and that your kids are beginning to really have success. That's what's really important. We're going to turn now to our learning objective 3 and develop and implement measurement strategy. Now we're going to hit this kind of hard and fast. And if you haven't played with the measurement strategy before, we really hope that you'll be back in touch. But if you have big goals, and if you have operational objectives tied to those goals, and those things are written down and agreed upon, then you have to determine success by measuring. And I know the folks that Terry and I work with, when we talk about, hey, let's measure what you're doing, they're like, we don't have time for that. Sorry, we're busy. So we get a lot of that sometimes. So we want to talk about a measurement strategy. It's a plan. And I know as an old caseworker, as an old counselor, I'm thinking, hey, I don't have time for this. I've got to work with my clients. I've got to work with people. I can't waste my time on this stuff. We don't think it's a waste of time. We think it really helps you determine if you're really being successful for the kids and youth you're working with. So a measurement strategy is a plan that breaks down all the questions and also the data that you need to address to determine the results of your operational objectives. It also lists all the data you'll need to answer those questions. Whew. We realize that that's a big haul there, but that kind of stuff becomes really important. So implementing the measurement strategy. A couple things we want to point out here. And again, once this webinar is over, if you go back over this slide and you want to chat with us about it, give us a call, The call's free. We'd love to chat with you about this. Each operational objective should be supported by at least one metric, one kind of measure. For each metric or each measure, you define the supporting questions and the data that needs to be captured. Now, what we're talking about there is, in order to capture some data, usually you have to ask some questions. So just brainstorm, like in a staff meeting, brainstorm what those questions are, come up with a consensus of what those questions are, and give it a shot. And then define how that data will be tracked and retained. And also, who in the heck is going to do that? My daughter's a social worker, and the first program that she worked for after she earned her master's degree, she called me and was asking me about this kind of stuff. And I said, well, who in your agency is tracking this? And she said, nobody. So then you're in some trouble. So define how the data will be tracked and retained and who's going to do that. And this part, Terry and I really like to emphasize. Define the ritual for reporting on results. Just like the exchange that Nathaniel had with us, that kind of dialogue back and forth during a staff meeting, that can be part of your ritual if you do it on a regular basis. Maybe not every staff meeting, but on a regular basis, share, hey, this is how we're collecting our data for this particular objective, and share what it is. Or, hey, we're trying to collect this data and we're really having a lot of trouble. That's okay. That can be part of your ritual. Consider reviewing at maybe a monthly staff meeting, weekly, whatever you would choose. The trap some folks, some organizations fall into is that they set up an operational plan and they don't come back and look at it for a year. Boy, by then it's too late, the year's over with. And then consider the format and timing for reviews with management, because maybe if I'm working as a caseworker, but my case manager doesn't have any idea what I'm doing, wow, we don't want that disconnect. We really want us connected. All right, Terry.
So the next thing we wanted to do was we wanted to give you an example where you could see where we took the SMART objective and we started to basically break that down to say, what questions do we need to ask and what data do we need to capture and retain to figure out if we're meeting that SMART objective or not. So again, here is our HR example about turnover rates and reducing that by 10% by the end of the year. So the questions that we think we need to ask ourselves to figure that out is, well, what was our turnover rate for 12/31/23? Now you may or may not have that data, okay? If you don't have it, that's okay. There's something that you can do, which is called baselining for the first period of time that you are capturing a measurement. And then once you've captured the baseline, then you can use that to compare back against. But another question that we would ask here is how many employees were active as of the beginning of the year? How many employees left the organization this year? And how many employees have we hired? And certainly then you have the information that you need to take a look at the end of the year to go back and say, well, did we meet that 10% or did we not? So, we've talked about your strategic goals, and we've talked about, what a SMART objective is that should align to those strategic goals. So what we wanted to do next was basically give you some time to think about, okay, if you had an operational objective, what questions do you need to ask and what data do you need to capture? Now, Nathaniel, you said I could pick on you. So, maybe I will, and we can just we can just simply talk through this, or quite honestly, if someone else has put another example in the chat, we can do that as well. But, we talked about the fact that, we want to give these kids experience in the industry, and we want them to be paid for it. We want them to have the ability to create a portfolio because that's important to the industry. You know, maybe the pay that they're getting is somehow measured. So if you think about the things that we've talked about, and you think about how or what type of data you want to capture to figure out if you're meeting your objectives, what might, you know, some of that information look like? What kind of questions would you be asking yourself, let's say by the end of the year?
Possibly how much money how much money these kids make. Starters, track how many opportunities were given to these kids, an opportunity tracker, tracking the times, how many youth outreached to us. If we're giving 2 PAs on every booking, then see how many other youth were looking for more opportunities. So that then we would measure, okay, maybe we need to add more PAs onto these projects, things like that.
Excellent.
Great stuff.
I think you got it. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add? Okay, we're going to move on here. So Skip.
And I have technical problems, so I'm not.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to come back.
Okay, I'll continue on, okay? All right, so the next and the last objective that we have in terms of learning objectives is adjusting your playbook. That we're going to touch on iterative quality improvement and how that can help you to meet your objectives. So, you know, in trying to put this together, one of the things that we thought about was the fact is we want you to be comfortable with this, and we want to reassure you that there is no silver bullet when you put these measurement strategies together. So we entitled this, "The Best Laid Plans Often Change." And that's because they do. You know, you learn from your experience and you make adjustments as you go. So you may run into situations such as, you know, if you're establishing metrics for the first time, and I mentioned that term baselining before, where you're just starting to gather data, you might encounter a situation that you determine that, you know, an operational objective is not realistic after all. Maybe in my HR example, I figured out that 10% was way too lofty a goal, you know, and that based on the data that we've gotten back, that we've captured, you know, you're seeing that, you know, maybe it needs to really be more like 5%, you know, and that's okay. And then what if the result shows that you have a business process that is really highly inefficient? What can you do? Well, that is where this term about iterative quality improvements come in. And what is that? Well, those are just incremental changes or small changes that are made over time that are designed to help you improve your results, right, towards those operational objectives that you've laid out. They don't have to be monumental efforts. They just might be tiny steps or tweaks that you can make in a process that would give you big results. Other things to think about. No organization typically gets this right the very first time they do it, so take that to heart. But those small incremental changes that we just talked about can make a big difference. You can get a big bang for your buck just by making small changes to processes, or if necessary, to your objectives themselves. But the way you get to this is that you look at the results of your metrics, and that tells you where to look for the problems. You know, you may want to ask yourself, you know, is my metric off, or does my process need to change? Do I need to make a tweak there? We said don't cheat. You know, if the metric is off, before you change anything regarding your service delivery or your process, you know, ask yourself, are you measuring the right things or the wrong things? Or is what you're measuring simply unachievable? Like the example that I just cited with the HR, maybe 10% turnover is just not reachable. And, you know, sometimes it might seem that a process isn't, you can't really measure it, but there's typically a way that you can measure everything. I mean, some things may only be time stamped. You may say, we want to get this task done by this date. And that's the only measurement you have. Did you make that date? Other things may be more specific than that. Again, like the 10% turnover rate reduction. I don't know if Skip got back online or not, so I'm just going to keep going here.
I do not see him yet.
Okay. One of the keys here, guys, is again to make it iterative and repeatable. So we talked before about the concept of, you know, making this a ritual within your organization. You know, reviewing your results in staff meetings every so often, and then making sure that you're prepared to discuss that, you know, with your management. If in fact that ends up, you know, being two separate situations. But, you know, as you're working through that reporting ritual, either in staff meetings or with management, you know, assess how well the metrics that you're using are working, and talk about how you think you can improve the results, and look for those small incremental changes that could lead to improvements in your metric results. And then if you identify those changes, make a plan to implement them. You know, figure out the best way that you can do that, and what the timing of that should be. Now, instead of taking you through an exercise of trying to, you know, basically review information and make incremental changes as part of this webinar, we thought we would give you some homework. So if you get through this process and you come to a place where you feel that you need to, what we call adjust your playbook, meaning maybe you identify that, you know, you have a metric that isn't achievable, right? So you have to adjust that, or you find that you have something in your process that you need to tweak. You know, just think about what you've heard and what we've talked about today that you can apply. I mean, you can use the previous resources that we've provided in this slide deck as a resource. But keep in mind that your operational objectives need to be a challenge, right? The idea isn't that you make those metrics so easy to achieve that it doesn't give anybody anything to strive for within the organization. So they need to be achievable, but they also need to be a challenge that's designed to stretch the organization. And as Skip has mentioned before, you know, reach out for assistance, or if you just want to share or bounce ideas off of us, you know, you should feel more than welcome to do that. So I know that we've covered like a lot of information. This is just a visual reminder of, you know, the fact that on our continuum, we were going to talk about methodologies today, and I'm hoping that you got out of this the tools that you need to, you know, develop your line of sight strategic goals down to your operational objectives, and then to figure out what data and what measurements you need to put in place to achieve those objectives. But if you look at this, hopefully you can determine for your organization where you think you sit on that continuum, and have some ideas about how or what you can do to move forward. I just want to give you, you know, an opportunity. Do you have questions on, you know, any of the information that we have provided to you?
I have a question.
Sure.
So if one of our goals is like based on a feeling, so say it's to feel a sense of home after they've received a delivery from us, if we did that based on a numeric scale, maybe like before we delivered, what was your feeling of being in your apartment versus after we delivered, you know, right on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you feel at home, would that be a way to measure it, or is there a better way to implement measurement for something that's creating a feeling?
I would say that it is a viable alternative. What your example reminds me of is like almost like a customer satisfaction survey. And in the world that I came from, we did those. We did them on an annual basis, and based on how they answered the questions, and it was compared then to a scale like what you're talking about. And then we were evaluated based on how well we did. You know, did we get a 3.8 out of a 4? Did we get a 2 out of a 4, right? And if we did, what were we going to do about that? What were we going to put in place as operational objectives that would help us to bring those scores up? So yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is that's a viable alternative.
And I would jump in, Maria, because I was just thinking you could brainstorm, what does that mean to feel at home? You feel comfortable, you feel safe, you feel free to be yourself, right? You could come up with rating scales based on, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable do you feel? How free do you feel to be yourself? You know, and so you would have to define what that would look like to feel like you're home.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the feedback that we get is more vocal rather than our young adults filling out a survey. I think when we send them something to fill out, they're not super likely to do it. But if we're chatting with them while we're with them or call them over the phone, is that something in terms of like measurement? I know there's probably like a little bit of bias if we're right in front of them. But is there another way that we could, or that you would recommend getting engagement? Or do you think having that conversation with them instead of trying to send something when we don't typically get feedback is better?
I personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I think anything you can do face to face is better than handing someone a piece of paper. But there are also, maybe there's some type of an incentive that you can give them for filling out, you know, the survey. You know, that might be another option.
There's another point too, that what you're talking about, Maria, is really considered like a pre-post type of thing. What was it like before? What's it like now? And I think as has been discussed, if you do that in an interview format instead of a questionnaire, that whoever the caseworker is or the person working with them, just ask them that and actually just fills out the form real quickly by themselves. And I love what Teri said. If you have some kind of incentive, that can be really nice also. The last thing I want to mention, because I realize we're going to run out of time, is that you want to make sure that the kind of survey that you're using is evidence-based. However, go ahead and get started, and then you can begin to look at evidence-based questionnaires. And that's the kind of stuff that sometimes a university can help you with. Teri and I maybe could help you with that type of thing. But yeah, just like Len said, get your kids to brainstorm, you jot that down, document it, and start using it. That's the most critical thing, is to get started. Great questions, Maria.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
good. All right, so these are the learning objectives that we had in mind to cover today. Hopefully you have been able to, you know, get the idea of what we were trying to submit to you. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn, and because I know that she's got to go soon. Or maybe she did go.
Right, and I think I just put the wrong link in. I put an old one in, which was not, let me just put the one that was in GCY8HN. Okay, sorry, the second one is the right one. So yeah, thank you all very much for attending. And if you have a minute to fill out our evaluation, that helps us, it helps inform our series and, you know, what we can do to continue to improve it and offer good webinars to people in the community. So I appreciate your participation in that. and we can move on. So the webinar series, the next one we're going to be pulling together in a few months is going to be what tools or models can you use to measure impact. So we're getting even more into the nitty gritty with measurement with that webinar. So hopefully we'll see you back then. And here you have some information. This will be in the PowerPoint we send out to how to connect with Skip. Should you have any follow-up questions, you want to reach out to Skip or Teri, or Skip and Teri, and they would be happy to hear from you.
You bet.
And then as far as AOI opportunities, we can just skip on to the next slide. I just want to highlight, if you haven't yet registered in the new platform, I encourage everybody to do that. Just reach out to me if you need any help getting in. It's going to be so much easier than the old platform to get in and out. It's just a password and ID, but we just have to get you in for that first time, and then you'll have that ease of access. I have a guide for you and all of that good stuff. So just let me know if you need that assistance getting in. I really look forward to seeing everybody in the new platform. It's awesome. So that's
And thank
it.
you for hosting.
Yes,
We
thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I appreciate
you.
everybody's time today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you,
Good to see
Teri.
you,
Thank you,
folks.
Skip.
Thank
bet.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
It's nice
Good
to meet
see
y'all.
y'all. So, nice to meet y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, I think it's just us. So I do have to jump for my 3 o'clock. I sent a note to Elizabeth saying that I would be a couple minutes late, so I'm good. So thank you so much, Teri. Looks like Skip dropped off already.
All right.
I'll be
dear.
back in touch.
All right. Take care.
All right, thanks.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.